Hey guys, happy Friday. So I'm gonna try to get this word out as smoothly as possible because I really feel like I'm all over the place, but God speak through me in Jesus' name. But yeah, I'm gonna try to get this word out the best way I know how. But what I feel the Lord is saying to me, but I know that this word is not just for me, is that you're being served by legacy. Your legacy was always secured. You're being served by legacy. Your legacy was always secured. The definition of legacy is it's normally the amount of money or property left to someone in a will, but it's also the long-lasting impact of particular events or actions that took place in the past that's now a person's inheritance, that's now blessing their lives, right? Another word for legacy is inheritance. Another word is birthright, okay? So basically, we're gonna draw from all of these different definitions that overall, it's a legacy is something that was previously owned or, stewarded by someone else that you or another person or someone else gets to live off of, okay? Off of the legacy of that person. So anyways, let's get into this word. I went out to eat last weekend. I believe, was it Sunday? Was it Sunday? I believe it was a Sunday, guys. I think it was a Sunday. Yeah, I think it was Sunday or Saturday. I really don't remember, but I went out to eat last weekend with my neighbor. And we were just out, out shopping because she has an event that she's getting ready to go to with her family. So we were out shopping for that, and I was helping her look for some stuff, and we were just out having a good old time. We were going from store to store and just literally enjoying ourselves. Like, we both felt like God was telling us to enjoy ourselves. So that's what we were doing. And it was a beautiful day outside. Like, we got all cute and just went out. We went out in these streets, okay? Not in the club, but we went and hung out and we had a good time. And we went out to eat for like lunch. So it was maybe like 3 o'clock or something. And our server, her name was Legacy, right? She came to serve us. Her name was Legacy. The sweetest person. She was so courteous, so polite, and just, she was on her A game, okay? But her name was Legacy. So that happened, and this week starts, right? That was the weekend. This week starts up. And I mean, back to back to back, God kept giving me legacy, legacy, legacy. I could not get away from this word. Even yesterday, I'm reading something on my computer and some ad pops up and it's like legacy. And I just finally said, okay, God, what is it? Because you've been giving me this word since the weekend, and it started with us being served by a woman named Legacy. And that word, God just would not let it get away from me. Okay, so what I did, I asked God, what are you saying? And I felt led to grab my Bible. So I just grabbed my New King James Version Bible, and I'm like, let me know what you're talking about. And I just opened my Bible. And the minute I opened my Bible and I saw this specific name, I knew what God was talking about. And I just let him, go deeper on what he was saying. Let me drink coffee because my throat. None of these issues don't be happening until I'm recording. But I grabbed my Bible, and as soon as I saw this name of this particular person, I literally, my mind started going, and I'm like, I hear you, God. And I just let him download to me. So I'm going to share this with you guys, whoever this is for, but the Lord is saying you're being served by legacy. Your legacy was always secured. And some of you could see this as you're being served by inheritance. Your inheritance was always secured. But I'm going to use legacy because that is the word that the Lord gave me. You're being served by legacy. Your legacy was always secure. Okay? So when I opened my Bible, it opened up to 2 Samuel chapter 19, verse 24. So the title in my, I don't know if y'all can see this right here. The title in my New King James Version Bible says David and Mephibosheth meet, right? As soon as I saw the name Mephibosheth, I knew what God was talking about. Like, it nudged at my heartstrings so heavy, I just knew. And if you don't know the story of Mephibosheth, I can't even get these words out right now. If you don't know the story of Mephibosheth, you can go back to, what verse is it? Y'all, I have so many notes on my screen, it's crazy. Go read 2 Samuel, just start at chapter 4. But 2 Samuel chapter 4, verse 4, it says, Jonathan, the son of Saul, had a son who was lame in both feet. He was 5 years old when the news about Saul and Jonathan came to Jezreel. His nurse picked him up and fled, but as she hurried to leave, he fell and became disabled. His name was Mephibosheth. Mephibosheth became disabled because his nurse dropped him, okay? If you know Jonathan and Saul, King Saul, God originally anointed him as king, but due to his disobedience, and I just released the word on this is funny, Lord. But due to his disobedience and not doing what God told him to do, the Lord took his kingship away from him and gave it to David, right? David and Jonathan is Saul's son, were best friends, okay? Saul knew that David was chosen, not Saul, Jonathan knew that David was chosen by God. Jonathan knew the call on David's life, right? They were best friends. Like, Jonathan had his back and David had his back, right? So they were best friends. So again, Mephibosheth is Jonathan's son. When Saul and Jonathan were killed in battle, his nurse heard about it, and she picked up Mephibosheth getting ready to flee because back then, after a king was defeated, in ancient times, when a new king took over, it was common for any descendants of that previous king to be killed in order to eliminate threats to the throne and so forth, right? So the nurse was fearing, Lord, hold on, guys. So the nurse was fearing for Mephibosheth's life because he is a descendant of Saul and Jonathan, right? So she feared that he would be killed due to being a descendant of the previous king, right? So she picks him up to go run and care for him, but she did it too. She was moving too quickly and she dropped him, okay? So he became disabled and he could not walk, okay? So Mephibosheth is a person who had riches in his bloodline, okay? King Saul had money. Jonathan was well off. Like, he had riches in his bloodline, but when all of this happened, he was living in Lodabar, which is basically like a raggedy place, okay? So if you remember, let me see if I have the verse up. Hold on, guys. This is so difficult. It's like, give me 1 second. In 1 Samuel 20, verse 14 through 17, Jonathan had a covenant with David, right? Jonathan knew that David was God's chosen king and made a covenant with him. He asked David to show kindness to his descendants forever, right? And David agreed to it. So this covenant is what led to Mephibosheth's legacy. The legacy that Mephibosheth carried at the end of everything, being seated with David at his table forever, being put in a high place from such a low place, and I'm kind of skipping a little bit, but it comes from the covenant that Jonathan made with David. So that covenant ensured that Jonathan's legacy would be preserved through David. So that legacy traveled down to Jonathan's son, Mephibosheth. Okay? So I want to say this before I continue, because I'm going to give you guys what the Lord gave me. I'm going to read it off to you guys. But how many of you guys that this word is for have been dropped by people that should have cared for you? Catch this. A nurse is a nurse because she knows how to take care of people, right? She knows how to bring healing to people, right? Her job is to care for, not to drop people and disable them. That's opposite of what a nurse would do for someone, okay? So some of you guys too have trusted people to care for you, but instead they dropped you, okay? So y'all better catch this however you see fit. Instead of them caring for you, they dropped you for whatever the reason was. And that drop led to you feeling like you could not move forward. You had to literally allow God to mold you from the ground up. You felt like a lame man. You felt like a lame woman. Can't move forward. Every time you move forward, something else happens. Like many of you have went through a dropping by someone that you trusted to care for you. Okay, and you've hit rock bottom. You felt like you couldn't move forward. Mephibosheth could not walk. So physically, he could not walk and move forward. But I want you to see this spiritually and physically for yourselves. Not saying that your legs are broken and you're a Mephibosheth, but how many people have taken you through hell and it took a lot for you to move forward? But you relied on God in order to move you forward into whatever he had for you. But initially, God had to pick you up off of the ground. Okay? So I pray that you guys are catching this because I feel like this is so much. But I'm going to try to take my time here and not rush through it because I'm not in a rush. So anyways, Mephibosheth's legacy was always secured because his father Jonathan made sure of that. But all in all, it had nothing to do with Jonathan and David's covenant and everything to do with God's hands being upon both of them. God's hands were constantly over the friendship that Jonathan and David had, right? So Mephibosheth's legacy was secured this whole time, right? He wasn't going to stay in a dropped place forever. He wasn't going to stay in a lame state forever, despite his outside conditions. And y'all better catch this. So Jonathan and Saul ended up being killed in battle. The nurse tries to get Mephibosheth to safety, drops him. Boom, he's now lame, disabled, living in Lodabar, a low place. Like, you could see that as today's projects or something. Like he went from having rich blood and being in a place of luxury because, again, his grandfather was well off. Jonathan was way up. Help me, Lord. Jonathan was well off, but after their deaths and stuff, he went to being in a low place. And not only was he in a low place physically, imagine not being able to walk. He's a little boy, right? He's 5 years old when he's dropped. So a 5-year-old is used to running and playing and having fun. So imagine having that taken away from you over no fault of your own. Imagine going from playing and all these things to having that taken away from you. That could even take a toll on your mental. Not just your physical, your mental, your spiritual. So not only was he in a low place physically because of his legs and being in Lodabar and so forth, but I'm sure that took a toll on him mentally, spiritually, and all the things, okay? But God always knew that Mephibosheth would not stay in that low place, okay? He was dropped in order to be positioned. He was dropped in order to be served by legacy, okay? Because his father had made sure that was put in place with the covenant that he made with David, okay? So let's move forward. When I opened my Bible yesterday and I was just like, God, what are you saying when it comes to legacy? I told you guys it opened up to 2 Samuel chapter 19. And the first thing I saw was the title, David and Mephibosheth Meet. Okay? So this is after David finds Mephibosheth, right? And he brings Mephibosheth. I wish I could read this part to you guys. Hold on, y'all. Because I don't want to jump ahead. Hold on. Hold on, guys. Hold on. Okay. I feel led to read this. So we're going to read 2 Samuel. I'm going to start at chapter 9. I'm just going to start at verse 1. David asked, "Is there anyone still left in Saul's family? I want to show kindness to this person. I want to do it for Jonathan." I'm reading from the easy to read version. "There was a servant named Ziba from Saul's family. David's servants called Ziba to David. King David said to Ziba, or Ziba, I don't know, whatever, 'Are you Ziba?' Ziba said, 'Yes, I am your servant Ziba.' The king said, 'Is there anyone left of Saul's family? I want to show God's kindness.'" Catch this. I want to show God's kindness. He didn't say I want to show my kindness. I want to show God's kindness. So any kindness, any legacy, any inheritance that anyone is getting, that's due to God. It has nothing to do with the person, the status, the stage of life. He says, I want to show God's kindness to this person, okay? Ziba said to King David, "Jonathan has a son still living. He is crippled in both feet." The king said to Ziba, "Where is this son?" Ziba said to the king, "He is at the house of Machir, son of Amiel, in Lodabar." Then King David sent some of his officers to Lodabar to bring Jonathan's son from the house of Machir, son of Amiel. Guys, I'm sure I'm pronouncing these names incorrectly. Whatever. I'm not a Bible scholar, but I know my word, okay? Jonathan's son Mephibosheth came to David and bowed with his face low to the floor. David said, "Mephibosheth." Mephibosheth said, "Yes, sir, it is I, your servant Mephibosheth." David said to Mephibosheth, "Don't be afraid. I will be kind to you because of your father Jonathan." Translation, I will be kind to you because of this legacy that is already secured for you, okay? I hope y'all are catching it. "I will give back to you all the land of your grandfather Saul, and you will always be able to eat at my table." He didn't say, "I'll give some land to you." He says, "I will give you all the land, and you will always be able to eat at my table," okay? So in an instant, Mephibosheth was going from a low place, Lodabar, to being poor in all the things, to sitting at the king's table for the rest of his life and inheriting land that he didn't even know was his, okay? Catch this. Mephibosheth bowed to David again and said, "I am no better than a dead dog, but you are being very kind to me." What did I tell you guys? When someone goes through something like Mephibosheth has went through, and a lot of you guys have, you've been dropped by people that were supposed to care for you, whether that is an ex-husband, an ex-wife, your mama, your daddy, your grandma, whoever, okay? Whoever you were dropped by. When you're dropped by someone, that plays a big role on your mental health. And I said that to you guys already. So you see here, David is offering Mephibosheth all these great things, and Mephibosheth is comparing himself to a dead dog. So obviously, mentally and spiritually, he was drained due to the situations that he's been through in his circumstances, right? It says, Then King David called to Saul's servant Ziba and said, I have given Saul's family and everything he owns to your master's grandson, Mephibosheth. You will farm the land for Mephibosheth. Your sons and servants will do this for him. You will harvest the crops. Then your master's grandson will have plenty of food to eat. But Mephibosheth will always be allowed to eat at my table. Ziba had 15 sons and 20 servants. He said to King David, I am your servant. I will do everything that my lord the king commands. So Mephibosheth ate at David's table like one of the king's sons. Mephibosheth had a young son named Micah. All the people in Ziba's family became Mephibosheth's servants. Y'all better catch this. Mephibosheth lived in Jerusalem. He was crippled in both feet, and every day he ate at the king's table. So God may not have taken his crippled feet away, okay? Mind you, God could have done that if he wanted to. But God turned his mourning into dancing. He turned his mourning into joy. He changed his circumstances. And when God changes your circumstances, your mental state changes, it improves. Your spiritual state changes, it improves. When God changes your circumstances. I didn't say when you change them. I said when God changes them. These things also improve. Okay? So I'm going to stop right there with this story. I just felt led to read it to give you guys context, especially those that may have read it before, but maybe you didn't catch something that I just read, you know, and God is speaking to you through this. But anyways, that was how Mephibosheth went from a low place, Lodabar, to sitting at the king's table for the rest of his life. Okay. So let's fast forward to me asking God why he kept giving me legacy. And I opened to this set of verses in the Bible. Okay, so this set of verses that I opened to, God prompted me to go back, which is why I just read the scriptures, the verses that I just gave you guys. But when I opened up my Bible, it opened up to, like I said, 2 Samuel 19. I feel like I've said that a million times. Verse 24. And I'm going to read this to you guys also in the ESV version, so the easy to read version, ERV version. So it says, hold on. Mephibosheth goes to meet David. So this is what I opened up to when I was asking God, like, why he kept giving me legacy. It says, Saul's grandson Mephibosheth came down to meet King David. Mephibosheth had not cared for his feet, trimmed his mustache, or washed his clothes since the day the king left Jerusalem. When he met the king at Jerusalem, the king said, Mephibosheth, why didn't you go with me when I ran away from Jerusalem? Now, mind you, this is after Mephibosheth is in the king's house and David has hooked him up and so forth. This is after the fact. So during this time, David has to flee Jerusalem because David's son Absalom is trying to take over as king. He's trying to take over the throne. So to avoid bloodshed, okay, David humbled himself. He trusted God to secure his position. David knew God had called him to be king, but David's own son, Absalom, was trying to take his place. So Absalom had gotten all these people to be on his side and to support him and so forth. So David fled Jerusalem to avoid bloodshed, to avoid, you know, all the craziness and chaos. So at this point, he's coming back. He's coming back to Jerusalem, and Mephibosheth meets him, and he's asking Mephibosheth, why didn't you go with me when I ran away from Jerusalem, right? Because, of course, David expected him to go with him because David's been so good to him. Like, he allowed Mephibosheth to come and sit at his table for the rest of his life and so forth. So David's like, why didn't you come with me when I ran away from here, right? So verse 26, Mephibosheth answered, my lord and king, my servant tricked me. And he's referring to Ziba, right? I am crippled, so I said to my servant Ziba, go saddle a donkey for me so that I can go with the king. But my servant tricked me and said bad things about me. My lord and king, you are like an angel from God. Do whatever you think is right. You could have killed all my grandfather's family, but you did not do that. Instead, you included me among the people who eat at your own table. So I don't have a right to complain to the king about anything. Mephibosheth's heart was so pure, guys. The king said to Mephibosheth, don't say anything more about your problems. This is what I have decided. You and Ziba will divide the land. Mephibosheth said to the king, and I want y'all to catch this, my lord and king, it is enough that you have come home in peace. Let Ziba have the land. Mephibosheth showed his heart in this very moment. Mephibosheth didn't care nothing about no land. He was just happy that David was back and he was safe and sound. Mephibosheth wasn't even caring for himself while David was gone, which shows his heart posture. He cared about David. He loved David. So if you guys are confused by him saying just give Ziba the land, if you go back to 2 Samuel 16 verses 1 through 4, I'm going to read this to you and it's going to make sense. Ziba meets David. So this is when David is getting ready to flee Jerusalem, right? And I'm going a little bit backwards, but follow me. Just keep up. David went a short way over the top of the Mount of Olives and met Ziba, the servant of Mephibosheth. Ziba had 2 donkeys with saddles on them. The donkeys also carried 200 loaves of bread, 100 bunches of raisins, 100 summer fruits, and a wineskin full of wine. King David said to Ziba, what are these things for? Right? So this is as David is getting ready to flee Jerusalem. Ziba answered, the donkeys are for the king's family to ride on. The bread and the summer fruit are for the servants to eat, and the wine is refreshment for whoever begins to feel weak in the desert. Then the king asked, and where is Mephibosheth? Right? So here is Ziba bringing all these supplies for their journey, but David's like, okay, cool, we about to flee Jerusalem, but where is Mephibosheth? Okay? Ziba answered the king, Mephibosheth is staying in Jerusalem. He said, today the Israelites will give me my father's kingdom back to me. Then the king said to Ziba, all right, I now give you everything that belonged to Mephibosheth. Ziba said, I bow to you. I pray I will always be able to please you. Ziba lied. So basically Mephibosheth wanted to go with David, and he tells Ziba, who is his servant, he's like, go saddle the donkeys for me so that I can go with David. Ziba lies and leaves Mephibosheth and brings all of these goods and stuff to David, and he's like, this is what I brought for us on the journey. David's like, where's Mephibosheth? He's like, oh, Mephibosheth's staying behind because he's trying to take over the throne. Ziba was lying to David, okay? Ziba was lying. Mephibosheth is lame in both feet, so he couldn't saddle the donkeys himself and get himself together. He ordered Ziba to do it. But instead of Ziba doing it, he tricks Mephibosheth and he goes and lied to David. So David gives him all of Mephibosheth's land. Mind you, previously when David rescued Mephibosheth from Lodabar, he gave Mephibosheth all of that land, right? So David is sitting here listening to Ziba. Not once did David cross-reference and say, well, let me ask Mephibosheth when I get back why he didn't come. He believed Ziba, whatever his name is. He believed him. Okay? So that even shows you that even a man after God's own heart can make mistakes. Okay? So Ziba lied on him. Mephibosheth was never trying to gain position as king. He wasn't trying to do all of that, but Ziba is telling David this, and you can only imagine everything that's already going through David's mind because he has his own son up here trying to take his position, which is why he's fleeing Jerusalem. So David also had a lot on his mind. So he believed Ziba and gave all of the land to him in that moment. So when you go back to the verses that the Lord had me open up to, where it's talking about Mephibosheth goes to see David, that's when David is asking him, why didn't you come? And Mephibosheth goes to tell him, I wanted to come, but Ziba tricked me. Right? So in this moment, David doesn't know who to believe. So this is why David says, you guys can split the land. But Mephibosheth is like, I don't care nothing about that land. I'm just happy you're home. He can have it all. Okay? So I don't know who this word is for, but let me read what the Lord is saying. Okay? Because whoever this word is for, you could see yourself all throughout Mephibosheth's life. Things may have looked good for you at one point in time. You trusted a certain person or certain people. You were dropped. You hit rock bottom. God had to pull you from Lodabar, from this low place, okay? And now he's putting you in a position of divine legacy. Your legacy was already secured. And even as God has tried to position you, or not tried, God doesn't try, he positioned you. But even as God was positioning you for greater, you still had people going behind your back saying, no, this is what she said, this is what he said. They were still trying to lie to you in order to get things taken from you. But God saw your heart. He saw your heart. So God saw how they dropped you when they should have cared for you. But what looked like a fall was actually positioning. What looked like a fall was actually positioning. Even when you didn't understand it, he was setting you up. You thought he was disabling your life, keeping you stagnant, but all along, God was preparing a seat for you at the king's table, at his table for the rest of your life. Your condition, your reputation, and your status may have seemed to disqualify you, but God was never looking at that. He was looking at your heart. He wasn't preparing the promise for you. The promise was always there. Instead, he was preparing you for it. So when the door opened, you would steward the promise well. God saw the lies, the betrayal, and the things they tried to take from you, but he never let them truly succeed. Your heart spoke for you even when your words couldn't. Your fall does not define your legacy. Mephibosheth thought he was forgotten, but the king had already set a place for him. What was broken is being restored. What was done in fear cannot override God's plan. His nurse dropped him in panic, but God's hand still ensured his restoration. Your legacy is not lost because of pain or setbacks. If Mephibosheth went from a fallen place to a royal seat, God is saying your destiny is still intact. Mephibosheth's inheritance was secure, not by his own strength, but by a covenant made before he was even aware of it. Likewise, you are a part of a divine legacy, one that cannot be erased. A covenant made in the past is securing your future. Whether it's a promise God gave you or a spiritual inheritance from faithfulness before you, it still stands. Your seat at the king's table is non-negotiable. Your legacy is not just about earthly success. It's about your place in God's kingdom. You are not forgotten. You are not forsaken. You are being lifted. God is bringing you into the fullness of what was always yours. I pray that this word blesses who it's for, because I was struggling, okay, to get all of this out. I felt like I was all over the place, but it is what it is. I hope this blesses who it's for. And I'm seeing so many things that God has spoken about play out in my personal life. So I know that this word is not just for me, okay? If you look in scripture, what's crazy is that Mephibosheth, hold on guys. When I tell you I am struggling over here, I am struggling, but we're gonna be okay. Hold on. Hold on. So if you look in scripture, and you guys can read this on your own because I've read so much. Go read it. Mephibosheth's original name was Meribal. Okay, Meribal. And it literally means he that resists Baal. Okay, Baal is a false god or false gods. Okay, so Mephibosheth's original name was Meribal. It means he that resists Baal. Okay, which is so significant. in what God did in his life. Like, his life was a prophetic picture of grace, restoration, and divine favor. So he goes from having a name of he who resists Baal, right? To resist a false god is to stand against it, right? So even with his name, this is very significant, and I pray that this is making sense. Yeah, it's making sense. So he that resists false gods, right? Defiance against false gods, meaning his original name means rebellion against false gods in order to be faithful to God. But then his name changes to Mephibosheth. Mephibosheth means dispeller of shame or end of shame, okay? So he went from fighting against false gods, which is his original name, to end of shame, okay? So I think this is so significant because it shows that God never leaves you in a place where you're constantly fighting against evil, where you're constantly in a fight for your life. There comes a day when the end of shame will be there. He will give you beauty for ashes, right? Your story doesn't end in shame. So God is not going to always have you fighting against darkness and principalities in high places. Hence, Mephibosheth, his original name, defiance against false gods. If you're being defiant against false gods, you're fighting against darkness. You're fighting against Satan. You're fighting against idolatry and all the things, but God never leaves you in a place of fighting for your life. His name ends as Mephibosheth, end of shame. End of shame. And you could read his original name back in 1 Chronicles 8, verse 34. But again, later he becomes Mephibosheth, which is so significant because it shows that God not only honors those who resist idolatry, but he removes their shame as well. When you choose to resist false gods and resist idolatry, God partners with you. And you will not stay in a place of shame, of comparing yourself to a dog. You won't stay in that place. God didn't leave him in a place of struggle. Instead, he was transformed to signify the removal of shame and the restoration of honor. Even though Mephibosheth was in Lodabar, a place of barrenness, King David brought him into the palace and restored his inheritance. This is a picture of how God lifts us out of dark places of shame, lack, and brokenness and sits us in seats at his table. Okay? David said, who can I show God's kindness to? Not my kindness, God's kindness. Jesus is the ultimate shame bearer. Just like Mephibosheth went from forgotten to favored, Jesus bore our shame on the cross so that we could sit in heavenly places. The cross is the ultimate end of shame for us. We don't have to stay feeling guilty for the things that we went through or the choices that we've made or the droppings that we've had to endure. Jesus Christ died on a cross so that we would not have to bear that shame. Our identity is found in covenant, not condition. Catch that. Our identity is found in covenant, not condition. Mephibosheth was crippled, but still a covenant son because of Jonathan and David's relationship. So God's covenant with you is greater than your condition, whatever it looks like. So if you've been feeling like you've been in a place of Lodabar, which is a place of lack, delay, feeling forgotten, all those things, God is saying restoration is coming. It's a part of your secured legacy. It's a part of your secured inheritance, regardless of what it looks like. If there's been a season of waiting, warfare, feeling overlooked, know that God is preparing a table for you where shame will be completely removed. And just like Mephibosheth had a name shift from Mephibosheth to Mephibosheth, that's a prophetic shift. What was once a battle, aka Mephibosheth, resisting Baal, is now a declaration of victory. Mephibosheth, end of shame. So that's it. That's all, guys. That's it. That's all. I love you. I hope you have a great day. Let me get this uploaded and we'll talk whenever we talk. But happy Friday, and I pray that this blesses whoever it's for. Bye.